Hello, everyone.
Hello.
All right. Do you have the chat open?
I do not. Hang on. Oh, jeez. I got to turn that down.
Yeah, make sure you hit pause on that. Yummy beer.
No one's in the chat room, right? Or
Yeah,
I don't
it,
see anyone.
it said we had two people. Whatever. It's open. I will see it. If no one shows up, that's fine. They can listen to the audio version.
Show notes. Okay, I'm good.
Alrighty. Where's the show notes? Over here. So I'll ask you that later. Alrighty, let's start. Flying Life Podcast, episode 48, recorded on February 28th, 2019. Wait, stop. No, stop. I have to hit the record button.
That would suck.
All right, go ahead and say something.
I'm saying something. Test
Perfect.
1, 2, 3. Okay.
Nice. Everything's working the way it's supposed to be.
Love it.
Love that. All right, we're started. That's recording. Take 2. That would have sucked to record the whole podcast and not, I don't know, recorded it. Blind Life Podcast, episode 28, recorded February 28th, 2019. Welcome to the Flying Life podcast just about that flying, aviation, and my life. I'm Dispatcher Mike, a dispatcher for a major airline based here in the United States. Joining me on this show again is Dispatcher Greg, another dispatcher for a different major airline also based here in the United States. Greg, welcome back to the podcast. How did you enjoy your vacation?
I loved it. I didn't want to come back. For those that don't know, I was out in Mexico. I went on a cruise a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and it was warm. It was sunny. I had the unlimited alcohol beverage package, and my liver is still recovering from it. It's thriving for some more sun and warm. I came back to cold, snow, and the Chicago grip of Siberia that doesn't want to let go.
Yeah, and
terrible.
you had an adventure coming back from your trip as well, didn't you?
Yeah, so life of an airline employee, you're not guaranteed a seat anywhere. So, the plan was, okay, we're going to fly out of Fort Lauderdale. Well, guess what? We were driving to Fort Lauderdale and the flights were terrible. So we're like, okay, well, let's not go to Fort Lauderdale. So we're like, okay, let's go to Tampa, right? Because that looked pretty good. So we're driving through Alligator Alley down I think it's I-70 in Florida. We start looking at the flights and they're like, nope, don't look good out of Tampa anymore. So we said, okay, let's try Fort Myers. Fort Myers is on the way. Get to the airport of Fort Myers, and we just squeaked on. Last 2 seats on the aircraft. And it's a good thing we got on because the next day there was an ice storm at O'Hare. In fact, we were flying. When we landed at O'Hare, it was precipitating freezing rain. And the next day, they had wound up canceling everything out of going into O'Hare for the first morning bank because of the freezing rain. So it was a good thing we got on.
Yeah, Chicago sucks.
It does. And I'm telling you, the next, I don't know, 2 weeks, the first half of March, when it should be spring, if we get above 0 as high temperatures, it's going to be pretty good. So I'm looking forward to, I don't know what I'm looking forward to. Just
Well,
seeing the sun, maybe.
not
I
to
don't
rub
know.
it in a little bit, but I'm wearing shorts and t-shirts
I don't want to
working
hear it.
outside in the garage.
I don't want to.
The cherry trees already came and blossomed here, and
Yeah.
those are gone. Now the Bartlett pear trees are blossoming here. I'm looking out the window right now, and the underbrush in the woods is getting green and putting out the leaves. So pretty soon the big trees will also wake up and put out the leaves. And so yeah, a little bit
Well, so
change
just
the
want
latitude. If you change your latitude a little bit, you can get some warm weather, and spring has definitely sprung here.
well, so in a couple weeks, I'm taking a drive down to Fort Lauderdale with me and the 3 children. And for spring break, I've decided I'm not flying standby. And my sister lives down in Fort Lauderdale. So I'm thinking, hey, you know what? Let's just do a little road trip. May have a stopover in Atlanta, hint, hint. One of the nights, and maybe we could have a little meetup or something, depending if we
meet up, get together. That'd be fun
for dinner out in the Atlanta. Have a podcast out there.
Yeah, you actually do one of these things live
with me and the 3 children. They're teenagers, so they somewhat behave.
Yeah, just teenagers. Just give them a screen, and they'll be fine for a day.
That's right. So we'll see. That's on the radar.
Yeah, for me, I did that last podcast solo.
Yeah.
Holy cow, solo podcasting is hard.
And sorry, I missed you guys. My stepdaughter had back pains and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, sorry.
No, all important stuff, and why you needed to be where you needed to be, and then so yeah, I did that, and then I worked 8 out of 9 days. I went on a stretch. And well, I got compensated with overtime and things like that.
Cry me a river.
It sucked. 12-hour shifts, man. It's long, but did that, and then both sets of parents are in town right now, and so simple house projects. I'm like, woohoo! There's 2 other guys that can help me, and simple house projects have turned into large house projects. Something as simple of putting 4 outlets in our garage has turned into insulating half the garage and drywalling half the garage. And I just right before we started, figured that the 2 dads would be outside in the garage. No, they're at the table drinking coffee, waiting for me to get done with this to go back and get started.
Oh,
so hopefully they'll at least have lights hung by the time this podcast is over. If not, oh well. And my father-in-law goes, "Oh yeah, we'll have all the drywall hung by noon." And I'm like, "What world are you living in?" like, sir, what are you smoking? There's no way that this is getting done by noon. There's no way this is getting done by midnight.
Optimism at its best.
Yes, and I start back work tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, I go and work our either the wide body desk or the 7.6 desk. So
I got one up on you today. I got to work 8 hours this afternoon. Cry me a river here.
Yes, I know.
And then I get 8 hours of rest, and then got to be at work tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. So
and that's scheduled that way, or is that self-imposed punishment?
Well. You got me there.
Let's tell the rest of the story here, Greg.
No, it is self-induced. It's trades, but nonetheless, cry me a river.
Yes.
Anyway, but yeah, it's a pay forward for time off later down the road.
Yes.
But if it does make you feel any better, I do have some company scheduled quick turns coming up. So because they can do that. So
Are you guys limited to 8 hours off? Is that your limit?
8 hours.
Okay. I think the company can force is 10, I think, and then we can self-induce down to 8.
Yeah, the FAR is 8 hours.
Yeah.
So
now at Acme Blue, we had this up at Acme Compass where you literally our POI was so precise, I'll say, about the 8 hours that you actually had to sign out with the chief dispatcher on duty, and then you couldn't show back up until 8 hours later.
That's correct. Our programming, it won't even let you sign in.
Okay, so you guys are that stringent.
Yep.
See, at Acme, it's like, okay, see you in 8 hours. Like, there's no sign in, there's no sign out, there's no. Yep. It's a lot more relaxed.
Yeah, no, the program will actually restrict you. It'll tell your relieving dispatcher that you're not legal until X time, and then if you try signing in to the dispatch program, it'll say you're not legal and it'll kick you out.
Awesome. That's cool.
Yeah.
All right. In this episode, we're going to talk about some turbulence injuries, some Southwest maintenance issues, the Airbus to stop making the A380, Pakistani's airspace being closed, and then the Atlas Air accident down in Houston. And then for a topic, we'll talk about turbulence and flight planning and getting around turbulence and what we do for that. This topic came based off of something I need to put together for the Opposing Bases podcast and Romeo Hotel's wife. So that'd be Romeo Hotel Dose sent in a question about turbulence. And so it kind of inspired this whole podcast. So if you don't mind the screaming children chasing each other in the background with life going on here at home, let's go ahead and get started with the news. Gonna text my wife and ask her if she can maybe ask that the kids don't chase each other. I'll be right back.
I'm all alone. I don't see anyone in the chat room. Say hi if you're in there.
Yes. That was great. It's like, hey, you guys mind not chasing each other? Wife. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Did you start already? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we started.
Hey, as long as there's no blood. No, anyway, you don't want to scream.
They're having fun. It's fine.
Go outside. It's nice outside. Why aren't they going out and playing outside?
Because it's raining.
Oh, sorry.
All right, I got to open up these links. I'm very prepared that I didn't have the news links open. Do you know why? Because I was hanging drywall.
Yeah, I can tell.
Because hanging drywall is fun.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it gives you a lot more credit to people who build homes and things like that. And, well, that's why we do it. Pay people money to do that skill.
Yeah. I want someone to do it for me.
Alrighty, this first, let me hit this button here. All right, this first article comes from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution as it's loading, and it is a article headline says, severe turbulence injures 5 on Seattle-bound flight, and this is a flight that was operated by Compass Airlines on the 13th of February. from Orange County to Seattle SeaTac Airport, hit turbulence, severe turbulence, and then they diverted to Reno, Nevada, where there were 5 people were injured. Pictures and video from the flight on Twitter show the beverage carts tossed upside down, things flown all over the cabin. But it was Compass Flight 5763, like I said, from John Wayne Airport in Orange County, diverted to Reno, and it encountered turbulence at 34,000 feet. Now, what was going on meteorologically at the time was there was a huge storm that was pounding California, and this storm had some high winds on it. And I went back and I looked at the route of flight from FlightAware from this flight, and with those winds that were happening and hitting the mountain, and they were up at 34,000 feet, I looked at where probably right about where they got the turbulence. I'm pretty sure they got mountain wave is what I'm doing.
I'm agreeing.
And there's they were filed right up through. Acme has some mountain wave boxes, and we're very, very strict procedures when it comes to mountain wave, and that all comes back from Acme Compass and the studies they had through the 60s about mountain wave turbulence. But we'll talk more about that later. All in that, but pretty much, if you're on an airplane, sit down, keep your seatbelt fastened. That will keep you safe and where you need to be.
One thing I can say, I mean, the past, I don't know, 2 weeks, there have been numerous severe pyreps out over the Sierra Nevadas, just east of San Francisco. Got to get my geography correct here. As you're flying out over the mountains, and there's a government segment, it seems like daily now, between 11,000 feet and 20,000 feet for occasional severe turbulence. They call it severe turbulence, whether it's mountain wave or whatnot. They don't distinguish the two. But it's been no joke, and the pilots that have been flying over there, continuous moderate the whole way. So if you're flying out that direction, take those advice, or if the seatbelt sign is on, you better stay seated, because it's a rough ride.
Yeah. Have you ever been on an airplane with light mountain wave?
I pretty sure I have.
Have you been in the jump seat with mountain wave?
No.
Craziest, weirdest thing ever I've ever encountered on an airplane. And it was on one of my route calls, I think out of Orange County back towards Minneapolis. And there's no mountain wave forecast or all that. So it was very light. But all of a sudden, it's like you hit this wave and you hit the upslope, and the airplane starts to climb 200, 300 feet per minute, and the airspeed starts to drop, 10 knots, and then it stops, and then you come back down, and the nose comes down, and then the airspeed increases, and you start a descent. And I'm like, and it does it over. You hit the bottom, and it goes back up. And I go to the crew, I'm like, what's the airplane doing? Like, what is this? What's it doing? It's not supposed to be doing this. And they go, this is light mountain wave. I'm like, this is cool. I get it now. But you could see why that's light. It was nice and shallow and gentle, but you could see that severe is just a big hard over as you crash off the wave would flip people.
Oh yeah.
And I always like to say that people don't fly up when they hit turbulence. They stay still. The airplane falls on them. When you look at Newton's laws of motion and all of that the airplane moves, they are the object that stays at rest.
That's true. Yeah. Think about it.
Yeah, everyone's like, oh, everyone flew up.
Flew up. No. Yeah.
No, you just had a 737 land on your head, ma'am.
Yeah, it's scary stuff. I always keep my seatbelt on. If I'm not up, keep your seatbelt on.
Absolutely.
Safest way to go.
And it's always, as soon as you put the seatbelt sign on, the turbulence always stops.
Yeah, of course.
All right. The next set of articles we have is all about Southwest. And the first article is from CBS News. And airline mechanics feel that pressure to overlook potential safety problems, and it's an accident waiting to happen. And this airline mechanics say they feel pressured by management to look the other way and see potential safety problems on airplanes. An 8-month-long CBS News investigation reveals that cases that in some cases, the FAA agreed with those mechanics. To go ahead and basically give a whole recap of what's going on is that the mechanics, the certified aviation maintenance technicians, are finding more things broke on the 737s at Southwest than they have before. And this is causing high aircraft out of service counts and things like that. And it's causing, it's causing delays and cancellations at Southwest. Now, one could read between the lines of this and know that the Aircraft Mechanics Fraternal Association, or AMFA, which is the union that represents the Southwest members, they haven't had a contract in a while. So you could see it a bit of union posturing possibly, or something else. What do you think?
Yeah, that could have something to do with it. I remember in years past, in previous realms of airline industries, when mechanics want a contract or even pilots want a contract, mysteriously things break. And we got to fix it. Oh, well, it might take a while. I mean, it's a way to press the company and say, hey, you want things fixed timely, or if you don't want any operational issues, pony up.
Yeah, it's not like it's your car too when it's an airplane. It's like you go to the dealer and say, oh, you need looks like you're gonna need some new brakes. Okay, well, I don't want to do that right now. I'll do it next time. You could, on your car, you'd be like, okay, fine, I don't want to do that. You can't do that on an airplane. You find something that's legitimately broke, you have to address it right away. I mean, there's certain things that we can defer, and we can defer some maintenance up to 10 days, sometimes longer, depends on what it is that's broke. But in the end, if you find say you find a crack in a flap, you can't be like, oh, I'll take care of that later. No, you got to take care of that now.
Yeah.
That's got to be taken care of now. So, it's kind of a tough situation, tight situation where you need to have the airplanes fixed, or, you could say it that maybe they are, in the past, they've turned the other eye on some of these issues, and now it's coming back to bite them in the butt. Now that, the union is trying to make sure they are doing everything by the books.
Right. And every airline, safety is the number one priority, regardless of, labor issues or whatnot. So obviously, like you said, if it's a major safety issue, they're going to fix it. But are we going to fix it today? Or are we going to fix it 2 days from now? And now the airplane's out of service.
Right. And they were saying they were having aircraft out of service counts up in the 40s and 50 aircraft unscheduled out of service, which is huge numbers.
Yep.
I know at Acme we average 20. When we get up to 20, we get to the hurting point with aircraft out of service. Normally we're in the 10 to 15 range of unscheduled out of service aircraft. And then we have operational spares built in in the schedule for airplanes to be broken. So everything still runs pretty much good and on time. Now, there was this one time this week Since we recorded last, where we had some thunderstorms around Atlanta. They were the embedded type of thunderstorms. They were low top, nothing major severe. But at one point, we had 26 aircraft out of service in Atlanta with lightning strikes.
Ooh.
Plus the other normal. I mean, we had an aircraft out of service count up in the, I think we were at 42, 44 aircraft out of service. But, they called in extra people. They put out a bunch of overtime, and throughout the night and by the morning, we were down to back to a normal level of aircraft out of service. So it just goes to show that, you keep your employees happy, they'll keep you happy.
Absolutely.
All right. Next, and in the show notes, we'll have 3 articles and some statements from AMFA and all that if you wanted to read a little bit more into all of that. The next story is about the Airbus A380, and Boeing will stop making the world's largest passenger jet. This is after a decline in the number of orders, and Emirates just converted some orders from a Gulf carrier. Emirates will pare down its current A380 order from 214 from 53. Emirates said it separately would purchase 70 smaller A330 Neos and A350 wide bodies, listed at $21.4 billion. That's insane. So this is the Airbus, the A380. I remember this was back in 2003, was the 100-year anniversary of powered flight, and I was a student at Lewis University at the time, and they had an aviation symposium. And I remember quite clearly this happening. They had Airbus come in, and this was back in the time before the 787. The Dreamliner was in development, and the A380, also still a paper airplane, also in development. But both Boeing and Airbus came, and they both presented about their case of the future and what they thought and why they thought their airplanes were going to be the airplane of the future and the success of the future. And they were 2 completely separate ideas of how to get people from point A to point B. Airbus, the A380, moving 500 people at one time, hub to hub, and a huge hub to hub, great airplane. And that's what that airplane is used for. And is great for when you have slot controlled airports at their capacity. The only way to increase capacity is to increase the size of the aircraft, and that's exactly what the A380 was designed for and did. And on the other hand was Boeing with their 787, which was a smaller jet with long range, and they were trying to go after the point-to-point market, going more towards out of the hub and spoke, but going for more of a point-to-point on routes with thinner margins, where you have this super efficient airplane where you can now take that cost of flying into mainland China from the West Coast, like a lot of airlines do with the 787, or flying routes. I mean, the amount of routes that the 787 has opened up has boggled my mind, because whoever knew there'd be a market from Austin, Texas to London Heathrow. I mean, it's just a market that did it. But anyway, these 2 designs were put head to head with each other, and I just could see clearly then that I thought Boeing then had the better idea. But this is sad for the A380. It is. I would not call the program a failure. The airplane is an engineering marvel.
It's huge. It's beautiful. When
it's not beautiful.
Well,
it's ugly.
I like it. It's got 4 engines. I like any 4-engine airplane. Come on, it still looks big.
Big forehead. The front of the airplane is
it's
ugly.
It's not like the 47 design, but it's monstrous. I like to see these big jumbo airplanes and
Yeah,
be able to get these things in the air. You don't see that anymore. Now that they retire the 47s, all you got left with the 4 engines are the 380s, and you're gonna phase those out. So now
hey, you still have some A340-600s flying around,
well,
and that is a gorgeous looking airplane.
yeah, okay, fine.
Yeah, okay. No,
Sure.
but I mean, A380 is great. I mean, it's not like it's going away. It's not like
No, I
there's,
know.
but
It's a big airplane. It is a fuel hog. I mean, it's anything with 4 engines is obviously going to cost you more in fuel and
yep,
efficiency and so forth. But it's the efficiency, which is sadly why they're getting rid of or phasing it out.
right.
You
It's why the order backlog for that aircraft just isn't there.
Yeah.
Have
And
you ever been to Dubai?
never.
So I've went to Dubai. I think it was 5 years ago with my route qual, and just the sheer volume of aircraft that Emirates has, and the volume and size of their operation is just blows my mind. It boggles my mind how many A380s that airline operates and where they operate them to. And I think they had like an A380 Dubai to Doha. I'm like, really? And it was kind of fun sitting out there at the pool by the hotel where we were staying the last day. It's an aircraft spotter's dream.
How do you call that ugly?
It's the nose. The nose is ugly.
For those of you not watching, I have a picture of the 380.
Yeah. But I mean, it's if you want to go be you like seeing heavy metal take off. I mean, Emirates is, when I was there at that time, smallest airplane Emirates had was an A330. So it was 777, A330, A380, A380. It was awesome to watch airplanes take off while basking in the sun in February.
One day I would like to go on a emeritus and sit in their first class, or I don't know what they call it, but with the suites and the I hear it's like top
maybe you can use your profit sharing check for that.
Maybe not.
that tank of gas will get you a tank of gas,
and don't forget the microphone puff. Anyway,
alrighty.
Another topic.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and do this next story?
Well, I got to get my show notes up here. Stand by. What's our next story? That would be the
Pakistani airspace.
Pakistan airspace closed. So yesterday, hang on a second here. Pakistan issued a NOTAM closing all of Pakistani airspace and parts of India were shut down. And there's a list in the show notes. There's a link to it, but there's a bunch of airports that were closed down. You got Ameristar. I'm not going to list them all, but there's a bunch of India airports and airports in Pakistan that were all shut down because of this. It appears that there is a issue with the airplanes being shot down in the airspace, and some sort of, I'm trying to find what. Here it says why. Pakistan says it shot down 2 Indian Air Force jets. A Pakistani spokesman said one plane had fallen inside Pakistani territory and pilots had been arrested. All pilots are accounted for. It's a major escalation of simmering tensions between the nuclear-armed neighbors and comes a day after India launched airstrikes in Pakistan territory. So it's a military, political thing going on. How does this impact the airlines? Hugely. Anyone who routes through Pakistani airspace, which normally Acme Blue does to get flights in and out of India, this is a huge concern because now you have to completely reroute. Normally if you're departing out of Mumbai or Delhi, you're going up to the north through Pakistan and then up through further north up through Afghan and up that way. Now you're going to have to find a way to avoid that, which is further southwest to get out of India. What does that do? That increases fuel, increases flight time significantly because now you're not going the optimal route. Some airplanes can do it, some airplanes can't. And there was a picture on online of it was a crazy routing of, I forgot what airline it is, but they had to go like a complete circular route to avoid Pakistani. A normal flight time was something like 7 or 8 hours, and it wound up taking 10 and a half hours because of the route that they had to choose. It's a big costly thing for our airlines, and I do know that our eastbounds that were going from the States to India didn't have because the NOTAM was issued while the jets were en route, so they had a stop in I believe London to fuel to continue going out to India. So
yeah, so
it's
even still now, the Pakistani airspace is still closed, and they're rerouting a lot of traffic south of out of India, south of Pakistan through the Muscat Fur, and then continuing up on a more economical route. But yeah, this is a big deal, and I have a feeling that if this doesn't, as situation doesn't cool itself down, that this could then escalate into something a lot more that no one really wants to deal with.
Yeah, and even I'm just looking at the NOTAMs. It says in big letters, warning carriers to carry extra fuel in big bold. So
Yeah,
and that's going to be problematic for weight restricted aircraft. So
yeah, it's gonna be an issue.
Yeah. So newsflash: if you're going to India or somewhere in the Pakistani area, good luck.
Check with your airlines.
Check with your airline,
because I don't know how you're gonna get there.
Yep.
All right, and finally, this last week, NTSB investigators are searching for clues into the deadly Amazon cargo jet crash. This was Atlas Air Flight 3591 crashed in marshy waters outside of Houston on Saturday. 3 people on board died in the crash of the Boeing 767-300 cargo jet. Atlas Air was operating the flight for Amazon Prime Air, and watched the NTSB briefing from the 24th, and here were the kind of the clear points that I took away from that is that they have security video showing that the aircraft in the nose down attitude. The video was taken from about a mile away from a prison, and there are 5 seconds of video. There was no distress call. The debris field runs in a northwest direction and is 200 yards long and 100 yards wide. The landing gear is the most separated from the rest of the debris, and the wings and everything are located within the debris field. There was no declared hazmat on the aircraft, and the FBI was there strictly to gather evidence and interviews, but the FBI believes this is nothing but just a plane crash. There's at this time they did not expect any foul play involved with that. Very sad. 2 Atlas Air pilots and then a commuting pilot from Mesa Airlines, a captain, who just it really sucks. He just got his hire date at for United Airlines and made it to the show and got hired by a major, and unfortunately he's got 2 young kids and a wife at home that won't see dad again off the commuting.
Terrible. It's just an absolute terrible tragedy. You know, just
Greg,
I was working that day, and I was watching the arrival flow going into Houston. Now, there were thunderstorms in the area, but more to the northeast. We had a couple of Acme Blue Jets heading on the same arrival as this aircraft. And I just happened to be watching the arrival flow. Now, of course, I don't see everything. I just kind of watching the planes and didn't see anything, didn't hear anything until actually I got home. And then I was thinking about it like, yeah, there were thunderstorms in the area. there weren't many deviations. I didn't hear any complaints from any of the pilots. So just it was a very, very odd.
Yeah, and it's not like that weather in the area was shutting off the arrival.
No.
The arrival was still open. There was even still ATC was querying other aircraft on the arrival, see if they had any ELT going off, see if they could have any ground contact because they were missing an aircraft, and it's hard to misplace a heavy Boeing 767. But yeah, it's very sad.
Normally, if there's some bad weather in the area, you'll hear from your pilot saying, "Hey, we're deviating because of thunderstorms," or if you got some bad PIREPs for turbulence, you'll hear from people. Just that day, nothing. It was just like another normal day. Flights were getting in and out, and just odd how this aircraft just fell out of the sky. So sad. It's a
And
terrible tragedy.
yep, and to show how small this aviation community is, especially the aviation community or the aviation podcasting community, like we have a friend of the show, Brandon Gonzalez, who does the podcasting on the plane podcast, was a friend with the jump seater Sean Archuleta, and his so right there just touched. But Brandon's last podcast, episode 43, very short podcast, but very hard to listen to. Talked about Sean, his knowing of him, and he interviewed another friend of Sean, and kind of going on it. And then there's a GoFundMe page that they set up for Sean's family. So if you have extra money laying around, feel free to go ahead and
Absolutely.
reach out there to do it. There's also a crew GoFundMe page as well, but link to episode 43, Giant 3591. That link will be in the show notes, and if you haven't listened to Brandon's podcast before, you should go do so.
Yeah.
You should go and listen to it, because it's a great
Well,
one as well.
what I will just warn people is, you go online, if you do Google and just start reading what people write online about what they think happened, and all these conspiracy theorists out there who think it was sabotage, think it was, oh, they're just saying, oh, it was a flat front. It was, everyone has their theory as to what happened. Let the NTSB do their research. Let the airline figure out what happened. And once, go to official websites. The NTSB has a good website where they keep people posted. They have websites or the updates that they do. So try to stay away from being a conspiracy theorist and just
Yeah, no, definitely no speculation from us right
yeah,
now, because, well, I'm clueless.
right.
My first thought was lithium ion batteries.
Yeah.
That's the first thing that popped in my head. And well, there's no hazardous material on board. No, which means there's no lithium ion batteries on board. At least
Yep.
that was manifested on board. So I think a lot is going to come out when we figure out um what the black boxes say. What does the cockpit voice recorder say? What's off of the CVR?
And I don't think they've found that yet, have they?
They have not. They
Yeah.
have not found them yet. The aircraft crashed in a bay, and it's really just stuck in mud. It almost reminds me of the Value Jet flight that crashed into the Everglades, and it's the airplane's stuck in mud, and they were having issues with getting to the aircraft. The tides are, because the water's very shallow where it's at, so tides are a factor. High tide, low tide. When it's low tide, it's literally just mud and muck that they're working on, so that doesn't work out well for the NTSB investigation. It's going to be a while for this one. I have a feeling that before we're going to get any sort of real true answers.
Yep.
All right, on that depressing note, that's going to end the end of the news segment. Let's go ahead and move on to our topic. I'm going to hit this. right, in the topic this week, we're going to talk about turbulence, all about turbulence, how we know about turbulence, and the types of turbulence, and what we do to try to get away and get around of turbulence. And so that leads us to, well, let's just talk about the types of turbulence. And for that, we reach to Advisory Circular AC006 Bravo, and that would be in chapter 17. They talk about turbulence and causes of turbulence. Convective turbulence. This is turbulence that is vertical in motion, a result of convective currents, convection being thunderstorms and things like that, rising and sinking of air and all that. Obviously, that creates turbulence. They're not only just thunderstorms, but uneven surface heating, especially for the GA flyers like me. In the summertime, below, especially when you have those like cumulus clouds that form, that it is bumpy below the clouds. You get above the clouds, it's nice and smooth, and there's no issues there. So that's uneven surface heating can cause turbulence there. You have mechanical turbulence. Mechanical turbulence is turbulence that is caused by obstructions to the wind flow, such as trees, buildings, mountains, and so on. And these obstructions to the wind flow, it disrupts the smooth wind flow, and it causes eddies and other things to happen, and it mixes the air around. One of these types of mechanical turbulence that we've already talked about are mountain waves. And a mountain wave is happens in stable air when you have a strong wind that is blowing at the mountain. And earlier we talked about the Sierras, so let's just keep on that and talk about the Sierra Nevadas. Air is coming in from off the ocean, hitting the Sierra Nevadas. Now, if the air is stable, that air is forced up, and then it forces the next layer of air up, and then forces the next layer of air up, and then it comes crashing down, and then that creates a like a rotor wave low. But mountain waves can happen at the low level, but they also go and happen up at the high level, and they have been documented up to 200,000 feet high, and that is from the FAA document here. So you have an area of mountain wave that produce violent downdrafts on the immediate leeward side of the mountain, but also have that continue to propagate higher into the atmosphere as well. Greg, what's Acme Blue's policy on mountain waves? Do you guys have any defined areas or anything like that?
Not specifically. We have a independent weather source that'll forecast where they believe the mountain wave will occur. Generally every day in the winter, and it's a winter phenomenon mostly over the west side of the Rockies. Like as if you're going past Denver, they'll draw out a segment from roughly Denver west through, say, it's an area through Utah down through New Mexico. Basically anywhere where there's a mountain, they'll forecast some sort of mountain wave at a low altitude and at a higher altitude. Of course, it depends on the winds and that kind of thing. When I say every day, kind of loosely saying that, but if the winds are pretty strong across the mountains, there's going to be mountain wave. And again, on the Sierra Nevada side, as you're getting out of, say, San Francisco, you're through Reno area and that so forth, they're going to draw another segment for potential mountain wave. It's more of a winter hazard just because the winds are stronger in the winter.
And it's stable air.
And it's not uncommon to get moderate, sometimes severe mountain wave, especially if those winds are blowing hard across the Rockies.
Now I'm looking here in Acme, the guidelines for the mountain wave at Acme are incredibly stringent, because this is historical data and science that has gone back through the 1960s, talking about it, and we have numerous amounts of specific mountain wave boxes and criteria that have the general acting wind has to be, and that's all through North America, is majority of where they are. And there are some mountain waves that require west wind, and some mountain wave areas that require an east wind, but they are incredibly it is the amount of science that is into these is it boggles my mind, and our meteorology department does a great job. We know that when they're out, we just don't fly in them. We fly around that box, or they have come to find different routes that we have through these mountain wave areas that we can fly through to get through them, as long as we avoid the altitude of the wave that is in the high or low level altitude of the turbulence.
Yeah, I have to say we do the same thing. I mean, we try to avoid obviously any forecasted moderate or greater wave that's forecasted. And in some cases, I think they actually do a better job forecasting mountain wave than they do regular turbulence, because it's so well defined as to when that may occur. So if there's a box out there that says, hey, there's moderate wave expected from 15,000 to 25,000. Okay, well, our options are we could fly higher, right, to try to avoid throwing that wave, or maybe we could go a further northerly route to avoid it. It seems like if you get north over, Wyoming, you tend to avoid it better. Whereas if further south from, say, Colorado down to Albuquerque, that's where you generally are going to see your greatest waves. So, when I'm dispatching, I'm looking at, okay, a northerly route is probably going to be better in this particular case, just to avoid that wave if possible.
Yeah, going through our books, we have different regions. We have domestic United States mountain waves, which pretty much covers through Canada, down through over Idaho and western Montana, western Wyoming, and then through Colorado, down through New Mexico, and that'd be Cheyenne, Denver, Pueblo, Alamosa, Cimarron. There we have Mustang, Cold Oil, and Betty over on the border between California and Nevada. Many along the Canadian Rockies up towards Alaska, and a couple of Alaskan mountain wave areas. We have some more in there's 3 areas in Canada, 5 areas in Afghanistan that we forecast them for. We have some areas in Turkey. Greenland doesn't have its own mountain wave area that we have fixed, but the Greenland mountain wave is very, very prevalent in the wintertime. And then there are 3 in Europe, and then also sometimes along the Andes. So those are the areas of the world that have mountain wave in them and all of that. So as soon as we went off in that tangent a little bit on mountain waves, what else we get for turbulence is we have wind shear turbulence, and this is when 2 areas of wind that are opposite or in a different direction either change in rate of speed of the wind or change in direction, causes turbulence. If you got wind coming this way and then wind coming the other way, say you have a strong east wind below 6,000 feet, and above 6,000 feet you have a strong west wind, well, you're going to get some turbulence in between those 2 areas of air masses and flow. And then a temperature inversion can cause turbulence where the cold air and the warm air, where those 2 layers hit each other. And then also just air mass turbulence as it is. Any 2 air masses coming together can cause turbulence. That's convergence. And there's also when you have 2 air masses that are coming apart or diverging from each other, and you have divergent turbulence. You get turbulence from upper fronts. You get turbulence from upper troughs. And ridges, if they're moving at a specific speed, will cause turbulence. Same thing with the jet stream. If the jet stream is moving a certain speed north or south, it's going to cause some turbulence as well.
And that's what you're going to mostly see a lot this time of year is turbulence associated with the jet stream. I mean, you got these ripping jet streams coming through the States. You're going to get moderate, greater turbulence just along that jet.
Yeah. I remember going through dispatch initial at Acme Compass, and the meteorology section was taught by Acme Compass's chief meteorologist. And let's just say we learned all of what causes turbulence. And if a trough is moving at 15 knots greater, well, then you're going to have, the altitudes above and below. All of this I have since purged from my memory because I don't need to know it, because that's what we pay a meteorology department for.
Right. So what does Acme define as light, moderate, and occasional? Or light, moderate, or severe? Light chop.
Well, there's no such thing as light chop at Acme. Or, I mean, there's no such thing as smooth. Well, which one is it?
Right. Is it smooth or is it light chop?
I don't know. It's I don't know why my airline's getting that bad rap of that, but no, I did not do very well in the planning and looking in the book on what we define as smooth, light, moderate, or severe, but I think you did.
I did, actually. I'm trying to find the coffee analogy, and for whatever reason, I thought it used to be in our
we used to have a coffee cup analogy at Acme Compass as well. I don't know if it's made it over to Acme, but like if it was light, if there were ripples in the coffee, it was light to moderate if the coffee was starting to come up the edge of the rim but not spill out. It was moderate if the coffee started to spill over the coffee cup, and it was severe if the coffee cup could no longer be on the table.
Right. Yeah.
But it's kind of
that
funny.
It's true, because that was actually published in the manuals. I mean, that's in the that's what they defined it as.
Coffee cup guidance for levels of turbulence, because usually they assume the pilots would have a cup of coffee up on the flight deck.
But so now, more technical, I guess, if you want to go. So smooth is no turbulence that causes airspeed and or altitude variations. What is the reaction inside the aircraft? Well, nothing. You don't feel anything. It's like a smooth ride, right? Yep. Then you get into light turbulence. Well, what is light? Turbulence that momentarily causes slight erratic changes in altitude or attitude. What do you as a passenger feel? You may feel a slight strain against your seatbelt or shoulder straps. Unsecured objects may be displayed slightly. Food service may be conducted. Basically, you could walk across the aircraft. You'll feel a little bit of chop or a little bit of movement. It's nothing terrible. It's just light turbulence. So then you start getting into the greater variants of turbulence. So moderate. So moderate is turbulence that is similar to light turbulence, but greater in intensity. Changes in aircraft altitude and attitude may occur, but the aircraft remains in positive control at all times. That's a key word, that it remains in positive control. What do you feel as a passenger? You feel strain against your seatbelts and or shoulder straps. Unsecured objects are dislodged. Food service and walking are difficult. So if you're walking across the cabin like a drunken soldier, that's kind of what moderate is. If you start, things start moving around, that's what you'll feel. Now you start getting into the more serious one, which is severe. Severe is turbulence that causes large, abrupt changes in attitude and or altitude. It causes large variations in indicated airspeed or momentary loss of control of the aircraft. So your pilot has basically lost control of the plane for a few seconds or whatnot. It's not going to come tumbling out of the sky. It's just momentarily loss of control. So what do you as a passenger feel? Occupants are forced violently against your seats. Objects are tossed about. Food service and walking are impossible. Most of the time when there's severe turbulence, if you're not buckled in, you're gonna get injured. I mean, you're just gonna
Ouch. Will
ouch.
happen.
And you've seen pictures, that Compass one we were talking about earlier. If you go and look at the actual pictures of the galley cars, that's severe turbulence. So severe turbulence, I think, is reported more often than it actually occurs. It depends on the aircraft size. It depends on it's very subjective in some cases as to what's moderate and what's severe. A lot of times, I'll get a pirate from a captain saying, "Oh, we just experienced severe turbulence." And I'll say it right back, and you say, "Are you sure it's severe?" Because if you say that this is severe turbulence, there's certain criteria that has to be met. We have to do an aircraft inspection, all that kind of stuff. And then I go, well, maybe it wasn't severe, maybe it was moderate. It's very subjective in terms of, and
Right.
we'll talk about another method in a second. Go ahead.
We do the same thing as well. You know, almost to the point where the dispatcher sends up, "Hey, can you please refer to F1 page blah 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 blah." If it's severe turbulence, that's fine. We'll take care of it. First thing we ask, are there any injuries? And can you refer to F1 page blah to ensure that what you felt met severe turbulence?
Right.
Because like you said, the aircraft's going to go out of service. Paperwork has to be done. If there's an actual severe event that it causes our meteorologist to have to go and do a straight up investigation of their own to the meteorological impact of what caused the turbulence as well.
So at our airline, and I think this is becoming more common in the industry today, they're installing certain sensors on certain aircraft to measure the quality of the ride, and it's measured in grams per second. I could be wrong on how that's. Anyway, it equates to a number. So if there's light turbulence, it'll say, okay, that was 0.15 or 0.17, and it's based on an objective view of the type of aircraft. So all the 37s or all the Airbuses, basically within the same weight, will have the same type of sensor, and as it progresses through the air, it'll create what they call a heartbeat with that type of. So okay, over here it was 0.15, 0.17. As you get into the light, moderate, or if you get into severe, those numbers increase, and it'll actually transmit those numbers to our weather folks who can forecast, use that number to create a forecast. Okay, is it light? Excuse me, is it actually light or is it moderate? Okay, this aircraft experienced light. Now, maybe this one was moderate, and they can determine the weight using that number and using an objective view of the turbulence and pass it along to other aircraft in the area. Does ECME have that kind of similar thing?
Absolutely. We have the EDR, the EDR data, which is the eddy dissipation rate.
Thank you.
So it's a ratio. And yes, we have EDR data on all of our 737s, 767s, and I think 75s. I think we might be adding it to some more. But this EDR data, not only does it help individual airline, but it also feeds the GTG, which is the I don't know what GTG stands for.
Graphical turbulence guidance.
Yeah. So it feeds that. And so the more EDR data that you get thrown into the mix, the better that GTG is going to be for everybody. And I use the GTG when I go flying as well. Like if it's a nice day and looks good, I'll pull up the GTG to look to see what the turbulence is going to be like before I invite the wife and kids up flying. Because if it's going to be a crappy flying day turbulence wise, well, I'm just not going to go, or not invite them to go. I mean, because I'm doing it strictly recreationally. If I don't need to be up there, well, I don't have to go up there.
Right. The nice thing about the GTG and the program that we have is it'll communicate the PIREPs to other aircraft in the area. So if one of our aircraft experiences moderate, it'll pass it along to the aircraft behind them and say, hey, 737 ahead of you over this fix experienced moderate turbulence at this long lat at this altitude. So that could warn the crew behind them, hey, we might get turbulence over there. So this is good for the flying public and to pass it along to others.
Yeah, Acme also is putting this into the flight weather viewer app that they created on the pilot's iPad, so they can see a GTG display and everything like that. And sometimes we've had dispatchers plan flights based on the upper air and all of that, but the GTG data says that they're going to be right in the middle of the turbulence. And then we've had pilots call and complain, and then we had to have dispatchers talk them off the ledge and say, hey, this is why I did it. This is what I'm looking at.
Yeah, that's an everyday occurrence. You know, when I'm dispatching, I'm looking at generally the trope level because that seems to be a good indicator of where the turbulence is going to be. If you can get above the trope level, generally speaking, you're going to get a better ride. If the trope level is 34,000 feet and you can get them up to 37, 38,000 feet, the GTG may say, hey, you know, you might get turbulence all the way up to 40,000 feet, but meteorologically speaking, if you can get them up above the trope where they're historically the weather is generally lower, you're going to get a better ride. So unfortunately in the summer, while the trope levels are 45, 50,000 feet, well, that you can't avoid that, of course. But in the wintertime, shoot for the trope and aim higher if you can, if your aircraft can do it.
Absolutely.
So that's one of my way of dispatching in terms of turbulence mitigation. I mean, I'll look at the GTG, I'll look at what our company provides as far as turbulence guidance, but I find turbulence to be extremely difficult to forecast. I would say more than half the time, the forecast is off with the turbulence. I mean, it's very difficult. It is no discredit to our guys that do it. It's extremely difficult. And you know, you get the PIREPs. For people who don't know what PIREPs are, there's reports that other aircraft who have flown through the area, they say, hey, I flew through above Joliet and I experienced moderate turbulence at 25,000 feet. They'll submit that to air traffic control or to our dispatcher, and we will submit a report, and all the other airlines can see that. And then those will generate either a SIGMET or an AirMet that other airlines and everyone can use to try to avoid. So, I mean, you do what you can to avoid it. Technology is getting better, but you know, you can't avoid it. So there's times, no matter what you do, no matter how well you plan them, you can't avoid it. But you know, you do what you can to mitigate it.
I always found that our meteorology was pretty good at turbulence and pretty darn accurate and spot on, especially with the tools that they have. They can use. You can really jump in and really see where turbulence is going to be. Now, does Acme Blue? Do you guys use segments and airmits and all of that for your flight planning, or do you guys have some internal stuff that you use?
We do have a weather company that does provide our forecasting for turbulence that is controlling. So if they issue a moderate SIGMET, that is the controlling source. Now, if the government puts out, you know, a SIGMET that says occasional severe at this altitude, by the book, we're supposed to use our weather company as our controlling source. But we do have the authority under EWINS to use outside sources for weather type stuff and phenomena. So that being said, if the government does issue a SIGMET saying occasional severe, well, you know what? Even though our guys don't say that, I'm still going to do what I can to avoid it. I don't, you know, it's very rare that our company will issue a severe SIGMET, but you'll see it a lot of times in the government SIGMET. So, right. You know, it's just you do what you feel is the best thing as a dispatcher to avoid it if you can. If it's on the climb out, a lot of times you'll see, hey, especially over San Francisco, the last 2 weeks heading east, occasional severe from 12,000 to 25,000 feet. You can't avoid it. I mean, if you're heading eastbound, you're going to fly through the segment. Now, what do? Well, use your head if you can. Can you get high enough to avoid it? Fly lower. Maybe if you could stay 5,000 feet all the way through, sometimes you can, sometimes you can't.
Yeah, but if there's every flight going in on arrivals getting severe, we'll stop.
Well, yes,
using that arrival because we can't fly to plan through severe turbulence.
Absolutely.
Our company at Acme, our meteorologists reduced we don't really use the government segments or airmints at all. We get them. I believe the dispatchers still get them through their queue, but they don't get really looked at all. We use the company provided ones, and those are the controlling. And basically, our manual is written that they override any government's segments or anything like that. Especially if there's two areas. If the government's calling it severe and we're calling it light to moderate, well, guess what? Well, it's light to moderate because that's what we say it's going to be. Where we've gotten into some issues where flights be like, hey, they just gave me the segment for severe, and we come back, it's talk to meteorology, it's not going to be severe. And if you want to change altitudes, here's the fuel to do it. But the company we don't feel that you actually need to.
Yeah, no, I mean, we will use our own internal sources. But me being the weather geek that I am, always look at the government segments and being like, well, how many severe reports have there been over the past hour or 2 hours? If there's been one, well, what kind of aircraft reported it? Oh,
CRJ.
A CRJ or a Beechcraft or something like that. Well, you got to take that with a grain of salt. But I think the thing is just, just use common sense when you're flying through there, and in terms of trying to avoid it, fly higher, lower. But as you said, give them the flexibility, give them the fuel.
Yeah,
you can always plan them lower, and generally speaking, because it gives them the fuel. If they fly higher, well, they've got the fuel.
And no matter how you plan it, and if you plan through these avoid regions that the meteorologists put out, and you plan your perfect flight plan around it, just like you can take a horse to the lake, but you can't make the horse drink. The onus all then goes on to the pilots to execute the plan that we have. And if they choose to do something differently, well, they're the one flying the airplane.
Correct. We give them the guidance, and that, and that it goes to putting good dispatch remarks on your flight plan to cover yourself too. You and the pilot say, hey, there's forecasted turbulence from point A to point B. Here's what I did. I planned you higher. I planned you lower to avoid turbulence, or I routed you south to avoid this turbulence. Do you at Acme have remarks you put on your plans?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Some people more than others.
I'm one of those some people more than others. I have diarrhea of the keyboard when I put remarks on. Excuse my friend.
I'm the same way.
Yeah. Because the way I'm looking at it is I'm protecting myself, right? So, and protecting the pilot too. So, but if the government or the FAA were to ever say, hey, they got severe turbulence, you didn't put anything in your flight plan about turbulence. Well, I did what I did. I spelled it out for them.
Right. Exactly. No, I was the same way when I was cutting releases still, that I would remark the heck out of flight plans that needed it. And even if there was no remarks and it was a great day,
always something.
I'd even say no remarks, or, hey, looks like a good day. Nothing much to add. Looks straightforward. Something like that. I'd always make sure I had something in the remark section.
No forecasted keyword, significant weather en route.
That would be the good legal way to put it.
This way, hey, you know what? We didn't see anything. Nothing was forecasted. That's my coverall. But how many times do you see stuff forecasted that actually, or not forecasted, that actually occurs? So, but that's another episode.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's gonna beat that horse to death. And I think that's going to wrap up the episode. So you can find show notes for this episode at flyinlife.com/2019/48. Find me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all under the Flying in Life name. You can contact us on email, contact@flyinlife.com. And then, Greg, what about you?
Well, so I've heard a rumor that there's going to be a Greg at flyinginlife.com, but
As soon as I stop hanging drywall and can sit in front of the computer.
So in the meantime, you can reach me on Twitter or WXFan1978 or just through the various channels on Facebook or whatnot. So,
alrighty. You can find the show on Patreon if you want to pitch in a couple extra bucks to offset the web hosting and media hosting for the podcast. You head on over to there. Opening and closing music is from bensound.com. Bumper music is from purpleplanet.com. You can find the podcast on Stitcher Radio and pretty much anywhere else where you can put podcasts where podcasts are up there. So, and as we're seeing this here from the chat room, Masha goes on the topic of turbulence, and this is completely, totally unforecasted turbulence. That BizJet that got flipped over in the Middle East because it got in the wake of that A380. That would be severe turbulence, but you can't really forecast for or against that.
Yeah, correct.
Do you remember that event?
I vaguely remember hearing something about it. I don't know the
details. It was like a G4 or G5 got in. I think they were 1,000-foot opposite direction of an A380, and they snapped inverted.
Nice.
Airplane was totaled. They got it on the ground. They lost like 20,000 feet of altitude. Jeez. They got it on the ground. The cabin was trashed, and the airplane never flew again. It was written off because of spar damage.
Not good.
Yeah, you can't forecast for that one.
Can't.
Alrighty. Well, on that note, that's gonna wrap up the show, like I said, and I'm gonna hit this. Nope, I'm not gonna hit that, I guess. All right, well, have a good one, everybody. As Jeff always says, I'll fix this in post.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.
All right, see ya.